to Jack's Corner, where conservative values meet national headlines, and truth and reality have a seat at the table. From Louisville, Kentucky, here's your host, Jack Richardson.
Well, welcome to another edition of Jack's Corner, where truth and reality have a seat at the table. And before I get into the topics for today, I want to make a quick mention with regards to the so-called constitutional crisis the Democrats feign that we are in. The only crisis we have is the discovery of the criminal activity of the Democrat Party and the money they have laundered through different government agencies to support their leftist causes and candidates. You're seeing them literally in a panic mode every night at the news hour. We now see who the true enemies of life, liberty, and happiness have been, and we must continue to push forward to reveal this massive criminal cover-up of the Democrat Party. I will have more to say on that later and about this, but with that, I want to move on to my first topic, and that's going to deal with Trump's firings of federal employees. Trump is holding true to his promise to shrink the government and get rid of the deep state. People are being fired, others given a buyout package, which 65,000 have accepted so far, and there is a hiring freeze in place. Let me remind you that Bill Clinton did the same. In fact, he eliminated close to 400,000 federal workers while he was president. But that doesn't matter to a Democrat or what I call a demoncrat. Forget that it is good for the country. They don't like their donor base shrinking. So what is the first thing the Democrats do? They rush to the liberal courts, preferably a judge appointed by a Democrat president. You see, you can always count on evil being evil and doing evil. So they went to the First Circuit, and a district judge slapped a nationwide injunction on the whole country. Now, that is called judicial misconduct, and he should be removed. But that's a discussion for another time. Now, as the bloated government is being placed on a diet, there are also investigations via DOGE, that is basically the Department of Government Efficiency, and we have found out that the Democrat money laundering scheme has been in full force and effect, and particularly during the Biden administration. Now, as Trump begins the cleansing of the federal government of the socialists and communists, we are seeing just how corrupt they have been. We may need to build a new and very large penitentiary to house all of these corrupt actors. An organization run by veteran Democrat election lawyer Mark Elias, representing federal unions, brought a suit aimed at stopping the Trump administration's buyout of federal employees. Forget the fact that Clinton did the same thing. Nevertheless, the U.S. District Court Judge George O'Toole, another Democrat appointee by President Bill Clinton, handed the union a short-term victory on Thursday, extending the February 6th deadline to accept a buyout to resign now and receive pay and benefits until the end of September. The extension stretched to the deadline of February 10th, when another hearing was scheduled to examine the legality of the buyout offer. These leftist judges are corrupt and will not follow the law. As did Andrew Jackson, he ignored the courts, basically telling them to try to stop him, and he forced things to the Supreme Court. Don't wait on lengthy appeals. This is where the Supreme Court has all too often rendered themselves irrelevant. Justice delayed is justice denied, and strict rules must be promulgated to require decisions within a short period of time. That's what we don't have today. And now the judicial system is being manipulated by the Democrats to stall what you, the voters, voted for in November, and that is a change in government and get rid of the corruption in the government. And the Democrats right now are protecting that from happening. Now, while the Democrat challenged Trump's attempt to stop corrupt federal spending, he is also being challenged as to how it relates to closing USAID. Here is where you will find fertile ground for the indictment and conviction of many Democrats. You know, the type that become multimillionaires in short order. Here are some facts for you. They are absolutely astounding. Chelsea Clinton gets $84 million, $27 million to the Soros foundations and the Black Lives Matter. $68 million to the World Economic Forum, $27 million to the Soros Prosecutors Fund, $43 million for an empty gas station in Afghanistan, and millions went for a transgender opera training in Ecuador and Colombia, $50 million for condoms in Gaza. From the looks of it, the U.S. is trying to turn the rest of the world into gays and transsexuals. No wonder the rest of the world hates us. Indictments and prosecutions should fly like a swarm of locusts against these people and those who made the decisions to distribute these taxpayer funds. This is in part how the Democrat Party funded itself in what I call a soft insurrection by undermining the country from within. And to top it all off, they were going to use taxpayer funds to do it. So let me give you an example here. With DOGE, again, that's the Department of Government Efficiency, which is now uncovering Democrat fraud and corruption, we are seeing the Democrats and their media convulse. So what do we do with this treasure trove of criminal evidence? Well, first of all, we need to thoroughly solidify in the minds of the public just who the enemy is. In political terms, that is called defining your opposition. As studies have shown, once you have convinced someone the other guy is a bad guy, it is virtually impossible to change their mind. As the old adage says and goes, you can't convince someone out of something they have been convinced into. So early and often is critical, even like dictator Lenin of Russia once recognized, "Give me a child until he is 5, and the seeds that I plant will never be uprooted." So here's the plan. And this is for Republicans to keep in mind. In the minds of Americans, we need one new weekly reminder focused on the one public spokesman or media type of that week and expose them for all the lies they have told. That way, we sear into the minds of the public how corrupt these are and the Democrats that they support. Let's take Adam Schiff, for example. He was censured by Congress for lying, and he did it again in the confirmation hearings. The Republicans must start using the same tactics as the Democrats. That is, have talking points that you do not deviate from, and for that whole week do nothing but emphasize the corruption of that person, and in that instance, and in this particular instance, Schiff. Another example would be Leslie Stahl of 60 Minutes. Circulating talking points about her biases, and the multitude of times she has lied and been wrong is necessary. Pound away at that theme for a solid week. She will be discredited, as will CBS News. The same can be done weekly by focusing on only one for that particular week. They can call it Liar of the Week. This delegitimizing tactic accomplishes several things. One, that particular person becomes suspect in the eyes of the public and not to be believed. That makes them a liability to their employer. In Stahl's case, it would be CBS. In Schiff's case, it will be eventually spread to the Democrat Party as a whole. Second, the main target is the employer, who will have to make a financial decision as to whether they can afford the liability and the decreased revenues as viewership begins to fall off, and thus advertising revenues. This is happening at CNN and MSNBC. Look at Jim Acosta at CNN. He's out. CNN has laid off 300 employees so far, and MSNBC is on life support. A third item is when it comes to electing officials or elected officials, such as Nancy Pelosi, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Elizabeth Warren, Michael Bennet, and Maxine Waters, they must become synonyms with the name Democrat in a very negative way. In other words, all Democrats are like this. And in fact, when you look at their voting records, they vote as a bloc. There is no diversity of thought with them. So they are one and the same, the Democrat and these bad actors. Each week, the focus needs to be on that particular Democrat, essentially doing an expose on them and making sure the public hears the Democrat label appended to their name. List all their proven lies. This puts them on the defensive, but it tarnishes the Democrat brand. A fourth item is, at the end of 1 year, think about this, at the end of 1 year, you have targeted 52 corrupt and malevolent people, and the accumulative effect is profound. In fact, you will not even have to get to 52 because after the first dozen, the cost to them and the party they represent will be so high that they will be shut down from spewing their lies. If only the Republicans can be trained to be as disciplined and as tough as Trump is. But you can make them tough by threatening them with primaries if they don't man up. Oust them from office if they don't. Now I want to switch to another topic, and this is really not a really newsworthy event other than I think that it's important for this individual to be in your sights for the future. Because if you don't catch these things early, and particularly when you're trying to define somebody, then you're going to have problems later. And that's with regards to this Hogg guy who's the vice chair, who's just been recently voted in as the vice chair of the Democrat Party. Now, to the wonderful leadership makeup of the Democratic Party, and particularly their newly elected, what I call child vice chair, David Hogg. What did I tell you last week about the Greta Thunberg in pants? Here's his most recent attempt at attention seeking. In seizing the first opportunity that he could to get in front of a camera, he exclaimed that he has had enough of Elon Musk's ceaseless efforts to drain the swamp in Washington, D.C., making the unusual worn-out claims, or make it really the usual worn-out claims about Musk not being elected and that he should be replaced with a former transportation secretary, of all people, Pete Buttigieg. Well, Mr. Hogg, grow up and go to school. Mr. Buttigieg was not only a discredited and failed Secretary of Transportation, but also a leftist Democrat that the president does not want or need in his administration. Pete was part of the deep state problem. Anyway, this is not a big news item, as I said, but rather an item to keep the eyes open for. Hogg is another irrational precancer desiring to be the next Democrat star. Start defining him now, as I lectured about how you define people early on. Now I want to move to the next topic, and that is for you to keep your ears and eyes open, as it appears that some in the CIA and the FBI and other agencies, in conjunction with the USAID, may be guilty of treason for trying to commit a regime change in this country, that is, getting rid of Trump. But of course, they've done this, and this is a fact where they have done it in other countries around the world. At home here, they apparently did this by using USAID as the front to funnel millions to help create a negative narrative around Trump. But now you have seen the billions that USAID spent on trying to turn the world gay and trans. But behind it all was the quiet insurrection that they were conducting here and around the world. A significant percentage of the FBI was being used to investigate the January 6th protest in D.C. back in 2021. Get this, 5,000 agents and employees of the FBI were going after Americans that had any remote association with the protest. There was no insurrection on January 6th, as emerging facts are now revealing. You have been misled once again. You have been conditioned to think of January 6th as an insurrection that we are now seeing was a Democrat cover-up of their regime change designed to oust Trump from office and to keep him out. Moreover, they were also coming after all conservatives. Yes, the Democrats are in a panic since Trump took office, as their criminality is now being exposed. Folks, as I have said repeatedly, the left is psychotic and dangerous. Give them no quarter. Don't go soft on removing this deadly infection from our government. The Democrat Party is complicit in this hidden insurrection of theirs, and we must move quickly to expose them, indict them, and jail them. That's exactly what they were trying to do with Trump. And why? To cover up their own criminal activity, which is becoming every day at us like a drink out of a fire hose. People can't hardly even keep up with the corruption and the fraud that we are now discovering and what was going on in the last 4 years. There is no such thing as harshness when it comes to discussing remedies to the leftist Democrat cabal. How can you help? Well, disassociate from everything and everyone that supports, aids, or gives comfort to any Democrat because they voted and acted in unison to deprive you of your life, liberty, and happiness. Now, I want to talk about one other thing, and I had an opportunity over the weekend to deal with a friend that basically agrees a lot about what Trump's doing and all of his policies, but he was also concerned about his morality. Let me remind you this: Jesus Christ has never been president and never will be. After all, he's king over all creation. So what's up with how sinners trip over the morality issue when it comes to Trump? Well, I hear a lot of how some Christians are still caught up on what they term as Trump's morality issue. Seriously? It is usually combined with an intentional ignorance and a poor memory. For example, Scripture tells us that any man who claims to be without sin is a liar. Therefore, all of Trump's accusers on this issue fit into the category of the Pharisees wanting to stone the woman caught in adultery. As you recall, Christ said to them all, "Let him who is without sin among you be the first to cast a stone at her." Of course, as we all know, they dropped their stones and walked away. But let's bring this forward to today and refresh our failed memories on how we swallowed the camel but choked on gnats. How could we ever forget Bill Clinton, President Bill Clinton, and his sexual liaison with Monica Lewinsky, an intern in the White House? I could go through a slew of Democrat senators and congressmen who were guilty of the same thing but never faced the same condemnation upon moral grounds. I would also remind all, particularly in the Christian community, that President Trump accomplished in 2 years what the Christians weren't able to do in 52 years, and that was to get rid of Roe v. Wade. How ungrateful we are at times. Moreover, Trump has done more with his executive orders and legislation he has pushed to protect Christians from persecution than any other president. Yes, even more than Ronald Reagan, who, as good as he was, did not do as much. In a most recent move, President Trump, as reported in the February 10th, 2025 edition of the Daily Signal, noted that the federal government under President Joe Biden engaged in an egregious pattern of targeting peaceful Christians while ignoring violent anti-Christian offenses. The new president pledged not to tolerate this abuse of government and announced that what he called the task force to eradicate anti-Christian bias. Trump has removed DEI and transgender from our schools and declared there are only two sexes, male and female. He has removed the LGBTQ++ and whatever else you want to add to it, flags from our embassies and government agencies. He is bringing to an end the indoctrination of our children in schools, and men are not allowed to play in girls' sports. So I ask my Christian brethren, what sins lurk in your background, and what have you done to promote Christianity and protect it and its adherents from persecution as Trump has done? Too many Christians love to hear themselves talk about what is wrong in the nation and wax eloquently on moral issues and virtues, but do nothing else. Yep, it's time to ditch your sanctimonious attitudes and all the false piety and accept the fact that Trump has been and is the greatest protector of our Christian values than anyone else who has been in and occupied the presidency. Sadly, for some of us, it still doesn't seem to be enough. Now it comes down to whether you know anything about the wisdom of Proverbs. According to Proverbs, we are either wise or fools. So what category are you in? It's time to look into the mirror and dust off your memory and open the good book, and you might just find yourself there. Trump deserves the prayers of Christians, not their criticisms. As a lifelong Christian, having done a stint in seminary myself while practicing law, I deplore the toxic tolerance I see in so many, particularly the type of tolerance I see in Christians toward what is evil. They exemplify so many of the traits of the Pharisees we read of in the Bible. The profound hypocrisy of some Christians who attack the one person who, as president, has done more to protect Christianity than any other, yet turn a blind eye to the Democrats who promote every evil, deviance, and abomination that God hates. As I've said many times, Christians often bring on their own persecution. In those instances, don't look to me for any sympathy. Rather, go look in the mirror, put down the remote, and dust off that Bible. I consider them the falsely assured, the wolves among the sheep, and the men who lapped up the water from the river like the dogs in the story of Gideon. They were unfit for service. They will be the ones in Matthew 7:22. On that day, many will say to me, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and cast out demons in your name, and do many mighty works in your name? And then I will declare them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness. Now, that's what we've been dealing with. And it's time for Christians, like I said previously, it's time for Christians to start praying for Trump and stop the criticism, because they are the ones that are holding stones and they are not themselves without sin. Now, there's one last topic I want to address, and that is what's happened to the Boy Scouts of America. You know, the CEOs of America, like Roger Crone of what used to be the Boy Scouts of America, he has taken the name boy out of the Boy Scouts of America. And these types of CEOs need to be rooted out of our corporate boardrooms like an infestation of rats, morally debased and ruthless and rudderless. They are tearing down America's sacred pillars that have supported our country so well over the centuries. Many churches have abandoned the BSA and need to continue doing so. The public must continue to pressure and expose the leaders for what they are, traitors to humanity and a thriving society. Their souls are as dark as midnight. Yes, they will someday pay the price, but until then, spare your children and the young boys who will one day be our leaders. As Franklin Graham said, I think the Mormon Church and all churches should pull out of the Boy Scouts organization completely. They need to get their younger boys out as well. I would not want my child or grandchild to be influenced by the lifestyle of a gay scout leader that goes against God's design for creation. Yes, the now former BSA now allows gay scout leaders. What kind of example is that to set for children? It is a predatory lifestyle, and no young boy will be safe. Shame on Crone, but let's not leave it at just shaming him, as he has no soul to feel shame. So there has to be something else, some accountability. The best course of action is financial, and that would be to abandon the new, what's called now, Scouting America, that he has created, and any institution that supports them. In today's world where morals don't exist as our guide, then unfortunately the dollar will be. This is your greatest leverage, as well as making Crone the name and the man attached to destroying the BSA. Well, that's it for this week, folks, but I want you to keep vigilant. There's never been a better time and more exciting time to come home from work and turn on the news. It's filled with a lot of positives, and you can see what our president and the Senate and the House are doing to bring our country back from the disaster we had under Biden and the corruption of the Democrats. You really need to inform yourself and keep informed, and to talk to your friends and family about this. This is the time. This is no time to be slothful. This is no time to take it easy and just sit back and just ignore things. It took a long time to get us here for everybody to focus and pay attention. So anyway, that's it for this week. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week. I'm Jack Richardson.